Okay, people are trickling in, and feel free to let us know where you're from in the chat. It's an old Rask tradition. Today I'm in Toronto, personally. Paul, where are you located today?
I am in Hampton, New Brunswick, all the way over the East Coast.
We've got Oakville, Ontario, Vernon, BC.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, center of the universe there.
Hey, Alan from my area. Hi, Alan. There,
and I think we are live on YouTube. Great. So thank you everyone for showing up tonight. We have another amazing session of Subs and Stars here with Paul Owen. For those who don't know, Paul Owen is our astrophotographer guru who has been teaching us all how to put these subs together and create amazing images. So thanks, Paul. In Hampton, New Brunswick.
All the way down here in the Maritimes. We love it.
Yeah. And I am, for those who don't know, Allendria Brunjes, editor-in-chief of SkyNews magazine. And SkyNews is putting Subs and Stars on in the hopes of getting everybody interested in astro image editing and astrophotography. The data that we use is from the Rask Robotic Telescope. The Rask Robotic Telescope team has been really awesome in helping us gather all of this fantastic data. The image that you see behind me well, that's my telescope actually. Let's see if I can go from this direction. There's the Bubble Nebula behind my telescope. And so they gathered all of the data, the narrowband data this time around for this image. It's the same one that's behind you too, right, Paul?
There it is.
Yeah. And that's your edit? I've got Stuart's up behind me.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, yeah, without further ado, I can just hand it off to you.
Well, all right. Well, thank you very much, Allendria, for having me again this month. And for those out there, thank you for tuning in. Tonight, we're going to cover some of the things that I think are super, super important if you're going to be using PixInsight for editing this amazing data that we have. And so we're going to cover basically how to take all those the data sets and how to look at them and make sure that all the individual frames are good and ready to go. And then we're going to show you how to put that into a specific piece of software and how to combine it all together. So we're going to take all these individual frames from all these individual things, like for example, the show portion, which is the narrowband data. We're going to show you how to take all those individual frames and make a master light frame out of each one. So that we'll have actually 1, 2, 3, we'll have 6. There we go. We'll have 6 master subframes after we're done our little stacking thing. And then we'll put it all together and we'll come up with an image, which is going to be in what we call show. And show is just basically narrowband data that is arranged in a color orientation. And so we'll show you how to do that. And at the same time, we're going to take our red, green, and blue data that was collected for the stars that you can see behind me there. And then we're going to show you how to put all that together at the very end of it. So there's some really neat things that'll happen. So it's going to take us a little while to kind of get through the first half of it. But the reason being is that I want to make sure that it's so that people can use this information. So if they're not here tonight and I want to look at it at YouTube a little later, because this is foundational stuff that you really need to know when you're putting all this together. So I'm going to see if I can't share my screen and cross my fingers. Everything comes up the way that I hope it does. And I'll hit share. Okay, good. And you should be seeing now my PixInsight screen.
It's up.
Is it? Perfect. Yep. Okay. Now I'm going to have to drop that down a little bit because I still Don't know how to get this not showing, but that's good. As long as I can see this part of it, we're good to go. Okay, so let's get started with this. So, so what we're dealing with this week is the Bubble Nebula, which is an emission nebula that is located in Cassiopeia, and it's associated with a star cluster. Excuse me. So depending on your field of view, a lot of people actually image this and get not only the Bubble Nebula, but also the star cluster, M53, I believe it is, all in the same field of view. And it's a gorgeous looking image when you can get it like that. So, but what we've done with this one is with the robotic telescope's camera and focal length, we've got a really nice in-depth view of this, this nebula. It's just gorgeous. So, so the first thing I want to talk about in PixInsight is this image monitoring screen, I'll call it. If you go to processes, all processes, and you go down to what's called blink, and you just open that up. And this is extremely important to use this tool, because what this tool is going to allow us to do is to have a look at all the frames before we decide to stack them, because I don't know how many times I've made a mistake where I've had some sour frames and I didn't bother checking them. I just threw them in and just assumed they were all good, because the 10 that I did look at were great. I assumed they all were. And boy, was I wrong a lot of times. So you have to go back and fix stuff. This is going to guarantee that you put in all the correct subs that you want. So it's a really
is sour frames the official terminology? Because if it isn't, it should be. I think that's great.
It's not, but
it really should be.
Those darn frames, or yeah, it's the sour ones. We'll go with that one.
Yeah.
So what we do with this is a really simple tool. What you do first of all is you simply go down to this little file, and you can't do anything else until you open the file, because the file is looking for something to look at. So we just click that, and then what's going to happen is it's going to ask you to try to find all your data. I've already got mine downloaded in here so that this will go a little quicker and easier, so we wouldn't be looking and watching data download for 3 weeks. So so what happens here, this is the SkyNews Bubble Level 2 information data set that I collected. So if I go back to here, you can see that I've got the H alpha calibrated and aligned subs, the O3, the S2, and the IRGB aligned sub. So I've got all that stuff. I get extra stuff there because I've been working on it. So just ignore that. So what this blink tool does is allows us to have a look at all of our subframes before we go ahead and put them together. So let's just go ahead and click on our H alpha. And as soon as you do, all of your files will open up, and you can tell it says HA right there. So that's the H alpha subset that we are going to put into blink. So how you do that is simply click on the top one, hover your mouse over your last file, hold down the shift key, and that of course will turn them all blue. And then you just simply hit open. Now what's going to happen is they're going to load into our little blink file system here. There they are. And at the same time, you're now going to see one of the images right over here. So the H alpha is this is an emission nebula, so I'm not surprised that the H alpha is the dominant nebula, or the dominant element in this image. So what we want to do with this blink is we can actually zoom in, we can zoom out. I prefer to kind of zoom into the structure itself. The reason being is I want to have a look at the structural integrity, and I want to have a look at the stars. And these are the things, as I go through all of the subframes, that I want to make sure that are consistent. And let's just do that. So there's a number of ways you can do it. You can just click on one, click on the other with your mouse, or you can use the arrows. When I click this way, it goes next image. I can go, if I'm down the bottom, I can go backwards. Or if I just want it to play like a half a second each, I can just hit the play button. Let's do that first. That way there, you don't have to click, and it'll just run through all the images. And that's what it's doing now. And as you can see, there's one funny image there that we're going to go back to. Okay, so let's stop that. And let's just do it manually now, because I saw something funny happen here, and I want to show you this. You see that? See how that picture kind of squashed? look at the structure, the bubble itself. And then when I go actually to that image, see how it kind of almost tilted in? There's a little something there. I don't know that it's enough that I would say, let's throw this sub away. I think it'll still work okay. But these are the kind of things that you're looking for. Okay. So other than that, I'm seeing consistent stars. If I see something that's a little darker than another sub, I'm not too worried about that, like what you're seeing here. You can actually go up to this top section that shows the little histogram. And if you click on it, it's going to equalize all of your subs to the same level. So let's just wait for that to do that. There we go. So as it does that, then when you click through your frames, then you're not going to run into those really dark subs. Okay, they'll stay nice and even. And again, anything you do here is not doing anything whatsoever to the sub frame itself. It's just allowing you to see the sub frames so that you can say, okay, you know what? They all look good. I'm happy with this data. I'm going to say I'm good with that. So if that's the case, then all you have to do is go down here. You're going to see that there are the first three little sections on the bottom. There's one with an X on it with 2 file folders. If you hover over it, it says close all images. So we're just going to go ahead and do that. So our H-alpha data is great. So now I want to go and let's have a look at our O2 data. So it's the same thing. So we're going to go back, grab our O3 data, sorry, and again, grab them all and open them up. And now let's have a look at what the oxygen 3 data looks like. And you're going to notice that because it's narrowband, it's going to be quite different than what we saw a moment ago, because there's a lot less of that O3 data in here than what is the H-alpha. And this is kind of neat. We can actually see all 3 separated.
There is a question from Ed. Why do some subs show up darker in Blink?
It's hard to say. I'm not sure. When I looked at this particular data, I think all the subs were the same length, and it might have been something that I pressed wrong on there. It could be something in one of the frames itself. But so long as I can stretch the frame and make it look like it fits with the rest of them, I'm not worried about that. Because when you actually go ahead and stack them, it's gonna average all that stuff out anyway. Just so long as I can actually open it up here with this and see that data. If I use this stretch and it still was black on me, I might be considered that I probably won't use that data set. But as long as I can see it, I'm good with it.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm just going to go through this, and you can see there's some variances in this, because again, I didn't equalize this one. I'm just looking at it for what it is. There is something I think that might show up in this. Let's just start it. No, I guess it's not this one. But that looks good to me. So again, I'm looking at all of the structural integrity. So in other words, there's nothing funky going on with any of the structure. All the stars look really, really good. Nothing went out of whack. So I'm happy with these subs. So we're going to go ahead and say we're okay with these. So we're going to clear these off. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to open our S2, which is the sulfur 2 data. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to load them in, open those up. And the reason I'm doing this to this degree, rather than saying just do it to all the images, is I want to kind of give you an idea of what it's going to be like when you're doing it yourself. Because if I showed you something that took 5 minutes when it actually takes 25 minutes, you might be saying, oh my gosh, I don't know. I wasn't told about this. But anyway, so again, let's look at that S3 data. Again, it's more in the upper red spectrum. S3 is very, very close to what HA is, but it's in a different spectrum again. So we're seeing different parts of the emission, which is right in here. So we'll kind of bring that in. Excuse me. And so far, I'm liking what I see here. Again, don't worry about the darkness and lightness. I can straighten all that out if need be. But everything looks good. So if I stretch that out, just give you an example. There's all kinds of stuff in there. So there's no issues with that. So all those subframes look good to me. So I'm going to clear those off and I'm going to say, yep, those are good. So all my narrowband data is good. Now, the nice thing about this is when you go to our star data, our RGB calibrated aligned subs, we'll open those up. it looks like there's a lot of subs, but there's very few of these. There's only 5 blue, 5 green, and 5 red. But we're going to grab them all at once anyway, because it doesn't take very long to go through these. And what we'll do, we're just going to be conscious that each 5 are a different subset. So we know now, just by looking over here, my first 5 are my blue ones. So let's have a look at the blue data. And it looks consistent all the way through. The green data may go a little dark, and it does. So we're going to open that up. There we go. And again, don't worry about those lines. I'm just having a stretch on this. And I'm looking at all 5 subs, and they are very consistent. I'm going to take that stretch off, and then we're going to look at the red. And the red. And I'll put that stretch back on for the red. There we go. And now the red, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they all look terrific. So I don't have any issues with any of these subs. They look good. So we're going to go ahead and use them all. I will mention one thing here at this stage is when you have more than say 8 or 10 subframes, and you look at your subframes and you've got airplanes going through them or satellite trails or anything like that, do not throw them away. They are good subframes. Because what's going to happen is once you get beyond a certain amount of frames that you put into your image, when you actually stack them, there's a specific algorithm that when you're above a certain amount of frames in the Sigma or the Windsor Sigma clipping frame or algorithm, and it will actually remove those oddities that are in your frame. So unless there's something structurally wrong or it's just an absolutely horrid frame, if all it is just things that are flying through, hang on to it. It's a good frame, and it will be a good frame, and it will average out. So since we've done all this, blink is now done. So we're going to close that off. We're going to close our blink. Now we know we've got really good data from that robotic telescope down in California. So now we're going to go to, instead of processes, we're going to go to script. So we're going to open up our script, and we're going to go to batch processing, because we want to process a whole batch of pictures. And then we're going to go down to where it says weighted batch pre-processing. We're going to open that up, and it's going to show us a window. And there it is, sure enough. Now, I've already loaded all of this stuff in, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to clear that off. Let's go to light frames, and I'm just going to clear them all out because I want to show you how to do it. So before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about what you're looking at here, because at first it could look very daunting if you've never seen this before, but it's actually laid out very logically. Everything on this side of the screen over to the left are basically what you are putting into the software that you're going to actually be combining or calibrating. So that's what this section is for. This section is basically to make some adjustments on whichever one of these things you're adjusting. So for example, if I go to my darks, you'll notice some things will change in the middle. If I go to my flats, things will change in the middle. If I go to my lights, some things will change. So the reason being is because each one of the subframes that you're going to be putting in here, they require a little different approach. That's all, because they're not all lights, they're not all flats, they're not all darks. So we have to approach those a little different when we put them in. But however, tonight we're just going to concentrate on lights, and I'll get to that in just a minute as to why. So when you look at the bottom, you're going to see all of these same things: bias, like you see here, bias, darks, flats, and so on. But the difference is these have pluses on them. So when you push these buttons up here, this is just so you can see what's in there. But if you want to add them in, you go to the bottom, and that's where you add your subs in. So you go down to your lights, and let's start adding some lights in. So if I click on my lights, and then I'm going to be bringing up my subsets again. And right now, excuse me, I want to put in all my blue and green and red. Now, PixInsight is smart enough to know that this is a blue sub, this is a green sub, and this is a red sub. So just watch what happens when I put these ones in. I'm going to click on them, and I'm going to open them. Now, PixInsight automatically separated them for me. So now I've got blues, greens, and reds. So that just simply means for you that you don't have to go ahead and put the reds in and then put them together, then go put the blues in and put them together. You just put them all in at once, and PixInsight's pretty smart, and it figures out what you got there. So let's add in our narrowband data. So we're going to go back to here, and we're going to, this you have to put in separately. So we're going to grab all that H alpha data, just like we did before. Click on the top one, hover the bottom one, and press click and shift, and it opens them all. So now I've got my hydrogen alpha in there. And now we're going to go back and grab some more. Let's go get that O3 data right here. So again, click on the top, click on the bottom. Whoops, I hit the button before. There we go. And we're going to throw those in. Now we've got our oxygen, our oxygen 3s in there as well. There it is there. And then we just need to add in. And each time I'm just going back to that light panel because I'm only inputting light subs or light frames. And so then I'm going to go down to my S2 data, and we're going to throw that in there. Okay, so now I've got all of my light frames that are in there. Now, with this particular data set, if you're using the level 2 data set, this is all you're going to get. You don't have to download the flats or the biases or whatever else that may have been used, because these particular individual images are already calibrated. And that's what the C in that thing is all about, is telling you that these are calibrated frames. So that means when I say, okay, you know what, this is good. I want to now put all of this together. So I'm going to go to my calibration section, and I'm getting all of these warnings. So do not panic when you see these warnings. These warnings are there for you to click on because it wants to talk to you and tell you something. So here's what the warning actually is for my blue frames. It says there are no matching master bias, master dark, or master flats found. The light frames will be integrated, but without being calibrated. But you know what? That's okay, because they already are calibrated. So this is just telling us something we already know, knowing if I'm going into that level 2 data, I'm grabbing frames that are already calibrated. So I don't have to worry about lights, flats, darks, or sorry, flats, darks, or bias. That's already included in these images. So when you see those warning signs, don't have a heart attack. it's just telling you this is what's going on. So that would be the calibration side of things. So we're okay there. Don't worry about unchecking or checking darks or flats, because that's what this warning was about. So it's smart enough to know that it doesn't have to worry about it. Just a little note I want to put right in here, because this is really important for those that are shooting with one-shot color cameras or DSLRs. With a one-shot color camera or DSLR, you're using what they call a Bayer matrix or a color filter array that goes over your sensor. This CFA images means color filter array. So if I was using a one-shot color camera or a DSLR, I would check this off. And then it's asking me, what is my Bayer or my mosaic pattern? Most of the times it's RGB on most cameras, but you can use auto, or you can look up your camera and see what your color filter array pattern is. But this is really, really important to know. I don't normally use auto. I normally choose the one that my camera is if I'm using one-shot color. We're not going to use that tonight because this is all shot with a mono camera. But I want to point that out just in case somebody grabs this and they say, oh my gosh, nothing's working right. Well, was it one shot? Yes, it was. Well, okay, you need to check off CFA. So that's what that is. So I want to make sure you understand that. So once we've got that done, pardon me, we go over to this side right here. And this side is telling us, actually, do I want to go back to my lights first? Yes, I do. Because this is important as well. In the lights, the portion of all of our light frames, in this middle section, we have linear pattern subtraction. We're not going to use that tonight. We have cosmetic correction. We're not going to use that tonight. But the three things that we have to use when we're stacking anything are subframe weighting, image registration, and image integration. And this is the beautiful thing about this. because these are all steps you would have to do manually if you were not using weighted batch pre-processing. If you're not using this script, you would have to go in and register all your parameters, then grab all that data again, integrate it all, and all that kind of stuff. This is all being done for you by simply checking off those little check marks. So we've got 3 things going on. So we're going to be doing some subframe weighting, we're going to be doing some image registration and image integration, but we're not doing it. PixInsight's doing it for us. The other thing over here is where it says registration reference image. We want to use the auto mode on that. And what registration reference image is, it's going to choose an image that has the best quality stars in it, the ones with the smallest points. And it's going to use that as a reference. And it's going to weight everything else from there, the next best, the next best, the next best, all the way down to the poorest image. So it's going to give us all of our better data right up in the front. So it's important to make sure that we do that. Check that off. And the other thing you have to do is you have to tell it where do you want all of these master frames to go. And if I did one before, then I would go ahead and do that one. But I'm going to click on this. And I can choose it and tell it where I want them to go. I can put it in my SkyNews Bubble level 2. I can put it in my Tuesday night tutorial, which is nothing. I can put it wherever I want to. So once you decide where you want it to go, because you don't want to go looking through your computer, where did all my subframes go? Put it to some place that you know that where it's going to be. Create a folder. Just create a folder, and you know it's going to go right into that folder. And when you do that, that's exactly where all of this data will go. Once you've hit the run button, you'll know where to find it. Post-processing, this just tells us what we've got in there. So again, anything that you choose up here is just telling you what you have. So we have an integration total time of 26 hours and 15 minutes. That's a whack of time on a target, but that's what we have. Okay. So then if I'm going to put this all together, all I'm going to do is do my diagnostics first, because it's going to tell me if we got issues. And it says no bias, no frames have been provided, darks or flats. We know that, right? So we're okay with that, but PixInsight wants us to make sure we're aware of it. And the pre-processed configuration, another warning, same warning on the blue file, the green, HA, but we're okay with all this. Okay, so we're going to hit okay. We're comfortable with that diagnostic. And then we're just going to hit run. I'm not going to do that now because this would take 15 minutes to do that. I've pre-done that, and I've already got the subs already lined up and ready to go in master light frames. Because after all of what we just talked about here now, the end result is we're going to have 6 master light frames to work with and stack and play and make an image. So I'm just going to exit this. And I'm going to go to File. I'm going to open my file. And here are all, by the magic of TV and time, here's all the subframes that you probably would have waited about 10 or 15 minutes to get. I've already done that ahead of time. So basically, we have a master light for our blue, master light for our green, master light for our red, and of course, all the 3, excuse me, all the, I want to show you something before I'm going to drop these on the screen. I'm going to open them all. But I want to show you something I forgot to show you that will save you just a ton of computer space. What am I doing? What am I doing wrong? Wake it up, maybe. There we go. So I'm going to open all these. I want you to see what's kind of happened here. Remember, we were going to open 6 frames, but look what's happening. You see all that? This is what I want to show you how not to do and end up with this. When you're in batch pre-processing, weighted batch pre-processing, and I just want that to open up. And when you're setting up your light frames, you see right down here where it says global options, make sure that generate rejection maps is not checked. Because if that is checked, you are not going to have, if I only had 6 frames, you're going to have 18 frames, which means you're going to have 18 or 3 times more data in your computer because you're taking all these rejection maps that you don't need. Okay, so make sure you do not check that unless you want to look at the rejection maps personally, I would say, don't worry about it. Trust PixInsight. So I'll turn that off. So the rejection maps are just basically things that out of these master frames that they rejected. But I don't care about that. I don't want to see that, and I don't want to see that. All I want is my master light. So I'll tuck that one aside. And I'm going to get rid of all these rejection frames. So again, make sure that you uncheck the rejection maps because you don't need them and they will eat up your computer space like you wouldn't believe. There. And let's get rid of all these rejections and take care of our, and it'll save you all of this time because when you're processing, time is of the essence, unless you're patient and you like doing it. To me, it's like knitting. Some people could sit there for hours and do it. I could sit there for hours and do this. Okay, so now we have our 6 master frames that we're going to work with. So isn't that wonderful? So I can take a little break here if there's any questions.
There was a question here. Do you use subframe selector at all?
Say again.
Do you use subframe selector at all? And so that was, yeah.
Oh, no, not to this point. Like basically what I showed you here is what I do pretty much for almost all the imaging that I do. And all of the data sets that I've used so far from the robotic telescope, this is pretty much what I've done. So I'm not saying don't, and I'm not saying don't explore, because I was exploring a lot of stuff just even today, and every day I learn something new about PixInsight. It's very powerful. There's a lot of tools. So by all means, you know, experiment and look around. And the nice thing too about PixInsight, the good folks at Masters of PixInsight are always posting things. They have these support pages for, like, say, for example, beginners of PixInsight, all of that stuff, where a lot of people just new to PixInsight, they can go onto those pages, and there's all kinds of people just like them starting out, and they pressed wrong buttons, or they've had a question like that. And there's all kinds of people that are at different levels that are there and willing to answer, and even the masters themselves, the Ron Breachers and the Warren Cullers, all those guys will even step in and give some information. So yeah, so great folks there. All right, so let's do what we need to do now. So what we need to do now is we need to put our information together. So first thing I want to do is I want to put my star color data together. So that is going to be the red, the blue, the green. I think we've all done this before, but it's very simple. Just look for your blue color, and blue is going to go to the B. Pretty straightforward. And the red is going to go to the R for red. And of course, the green is going to go to the G for green. Once we've got that done, simply push that little circle, and magically, there is your combined red, blue, and green image. And just to make sure that that is, in fact, the red, blue, and green image, we can stretch it. But remember, when we're doing our screen transfer function, we have not color calibrated. So we always want to uncheck the little link here before we stretch. So that way, when we stretch, we're going to get a relatively natural looking image. And we do. It's a little green heavy, but that's okay. But it's a natural looking image, so I'm okay with that. So now that I've looked at that and I'm okay with that, you no longer need these masters. I'm going to delete them, but always bear in mind they're still on your computer and they're still in the same place that you have them. These are just basically clones of what's still on your computer. So you can get rid of this stuff. And the reason I want to get rid of all of this is because I don't need them anymore, and it's going to clutter up my screen. And we want to have a clean space if we can. So this one here, I'm just going to exit out the red one, and I'm going to X him out, and the green one, and he's gone. So we no longer need those, because now we're going to go to where it's labeled image 19. We're going to right click on it, and we're going to go to our identifier, and we're going to call this our RGB and underscore stars. Okay, so now we have that. We can just park him over here for now. So the next thing we want to do is we want to clear this out again. And now we want to put together our a narrow band data, and we want to create what we call our show image. And that basically is nothing more, there's nothing magical about show other than it's the first letter in each of the narrow band filters. So S2, so the S would be my S will go to my red, and it's only going to red because to say show, it's the first letter. So that's shows in there. The next one is my hydrogen alpha, which is H, and I'll put that in the green. And this is just called color mapping. You can play around with it. You can move them around in different places and just to see what you actually end up with. It's amazing how many combinations you can come up with. And this is our oxygen 3, which would be our O. So now we've got our show data in here. And again, we're going to do exactly the same thing with our RGB. We're simply going to press our little magic button, the little circle, apply global. And sure enough, there is our show image. Let's stretch it, make sure we got the data that looks like that greenish, bluish, beautiful Hubble palette that people love so much. So we've got that. So now I'm going to say, you know what? I no longer need this. I no longer need this. And you don't have to open it like I did back there. You can just right click on it and you can delete the image because it'll give you a list of things you can do. And now, and I'm going to rename this. And I think you know what I'm going to rename it to. SHO. So there's my show image. Okay. So we can close this now. We don't need that right now. So now we have our show image and we have our RGB stars. So we went through all of that to put this data together. We looked at it. We came up with 2 master subs out of 6, and we came out of 6 master subs or master frames out of a gazillion images, 26 hours worth of data. Here it sits in 2 pictures. Okay, so we've got that done. So now we can actually start processing this and putting it together. How are we doing for time?
It is 8:40. So we're doing pretty okay, I think.
We're doing good. Yeah, that was the longest part of it we just went through.
Yeah.
The rest of it can go kind of easy because whatever I do to one, for the most part, I'll do to the other. So I'm going to work on putting these images together, crop them first because there is some stacking artifacts. If you look at this one here, for example, make that a little smaller. I'll make it bigger actually. And then I go to the top. You can see that there's some black stacking artifacts and that kind of stuff. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to, because the majority of this image is actually pretty much the central core. I'm going to do my dynamic crop. So I'm going to set this up. So if you don't know where your dynamic crop is, again, like everything else is under processes, all processes, and all of these tools are in alphabetical order. So dynamic crop starting with a D, I just find my D stuff and there it is, sure enough, right there. But I've loaded mine on my screen so that I can just get at it a little quicker. So simply double click your dynamic crop tool. And so what we want to do is I just want to take, when you do that, by the way, when you push that little square, that will give you this gray screen over the image that you're actually working on. And then you can just lay your cursor right on that until it turns into a square like this, or looks like a battery. And then that means you can just grab that line and pull it down. And the same thing over here. So I'm just going to take away a minimalist. There we go. That's a hard word to say. A minimalist amount of data, just to make sure that I'm getting rid of all that stuff that I don't want on there. That looks good. Before I execute it, I'm going to take my little blue triangle, because this dynamic crop is still active, and I can put it over to my other image, and it will automatically crop that one the same size as this one. And then I can go ahead and execute this one. And now I have 2 images that have been cropped identically. And again, if you want to try that, put them both the same size. So this is 1:7, and this is now 1:7. If I drag that over here, and you can see the stars are perfectly lined up. So that means that my crop was successful. So down the road, when I'm trying to put these together, I'm not going to run into alignment problems. Okay, so then our dynamic crop has been done. The next thing we want to do is our dynamic background extraction. I tried ABE, the automatic background extraction on this. It didn't work as well. So we'll go ahead and we'll do our dynamic background extraction. And again, like any extract, I'm gonna brighten this up so you can see it better. There we go. Any extraction that you do, again, for those who are just tuning in for the first time, when you're doing this, make sure that you're not sitting on bright stars, and make sure that you're not sitting on any kind of nebulosity, because I don't want anything like there, because it will alter my nebula, and that's not what I want to alter. Background extraction is to extract background information so that we have a nice even background. And what we're trying to do realistically is get rid of gradients and get rid of vignetting and all that kind of stuff that makes our uneven colors, that kind of stuff. And that's all background stuff that has to be nice and stable. It's kind of like when you start painting on a canvas, and if your image, say, was going to be white, for example, you get a white canvas, and you want to make sure that it's not white and tingy on one side and not so good and white on the other. Your background will look awful. So, and that's what we're doing with this. So I'm just moving these little sample points that automatically come up to spaces that do not have nebulosity and do not have bright stars, but yet are background information. If you end up over top of a little star, like this, for example, you can see it pop up here. Because my sample boxes are so big, the majority of this is background, so it won't really hurt it that much. But if you can just kind of nudge it a little bit there, it doesn't hurt either. But if you did happen to put one there, that's okay. Do not fear. You have not ruined anything. And I'm only going to do this once. Once I do this once, I'm going to copy my image like we did with the dynamic crop. And that way there, I can use all of these points multiple times because I'm going to need to use them multiple times. So I think, oh, that's sitting on nebula. Get out of there, you. And that one's on nebula. We don't want you there. I think, yep, looks good. So before I do anything, I'm going to take my little blue triangle and I'm going to drop it onto the desk. And that now has just created all of these dots because I'm going to need to use that again. So when I do my dynamic background extraction, to me, the defaults work very, very well with this. And that's kind of what I use on this. I will get into this and learn all the different tolerances and all the other things just to see if I can get a better job. But typically, again, PixInsight is very, very smart, and it does a really good job on most of its default settings. So, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to do two things with this. We're going to go to our target image correction. We're going to, this will drop down when you open that. And what I want to do is I want to do a subtraction. That's it. Simply grab the little triangle and drop it on the image. It's now going to go ahead and do its subtraction of the background stuff. And once it's done its thing, you could, if you want to look and see what it did, just go ahead and click on your background, stretch it, and you can see all the stuff that it worked on. Look at that, right? So now it's neutralized a lot of stuff. So that's what the background, excuse me, the background extraction, subtraction does. So, but I don't need to see that. I'm good with this. So now all I'm going to do that I've done that, I'm going to simply turn this off. It's saying cancel dynamic. Yes, I want to cancel it because I don't need this one anymore. Yes, I don't need this anymore. I'm going to turn it off. Okay, now I've got this image. So this is now my new image with the beginning of the background, and look how smoother it looks already. I'm going to do one more thing. This time I'm going to go ahead and do my division. Exactly the same thing. And you notice when I turned on this one, all of my sample points went right back to where I just did it a minute ago. And that's why I saved it. So we're going to go ahead and do our division. Excuse me. And sure enough, everything's there. So I don't need to look at the background. I have faith in PixInsight. I don't need the subtraction anymore. I don't need that tool, and I don't need that sub. I now have my show image with both forms of dynamic background on it. So it's good. Looks great.
There is,
oh, sorry.
There is a question.
Yes.
If now is an okay time.
Yes, absolutely.
What do you do if the majority of the image is nebulosity? Like if you want to do you do background, dynamic background extraction if your entire picture is a nebula?
You can. Some people don't. If, for example, if I had, a matter of fact, that's a good question because we had a nebula that was like that. I think when we did the Trifid, I think it was like that. And so what I did with it was I just found the spots that I knew were background. Unless it's 100% background, then I'm not sure that I would worry about that a whole lot because there is no background to deal with. But if there is background on it, even if it's a minute amount, like if I stretch this, for example, you can see there's a lot more nebulosity there than, you know, than what you would see on that or the stretch that's not twice as stretched. So you can see there's a lot of stuff going on in that, but yet I still did that. But if it was just 100%, probably not. Maybe I wouldn't do it. But if there was background in there and it was discolored, if I had maybe a red tinge in this corner, maybe it was just in that corner, and maybe down this corner it was, you know, nice black sky, then based on that, then I would at least put a couple of points here and there so that I could even out that background. But if there's no background whatsoever, if you're shooting, say, the central portion of the North American Nebula, the wall, and you're not looking at that space between it and the Pelican, just the nebulosity by itself, I may not do a background extraction. So hopefully that answered the question.
Yep, I think so. I mean, that is a good question because I think our, I don't want to give it away, but our January target might be a lot of nebulosity. So.
All right.
pretty nebulous.
Pretty nebulous. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So what I'm going to do here, whoops, I better turn that off again. Yes. I'm going to shrink this one down, and then I'm going to go ahead and open up, whoops, sorry. First thing, open up my star image. It's the same image. And you know what? I think I'm just going to use the same sample points. And we'll go ahead and do our subtraction. All right, turn that off. Yes, don't need that image anymore. And that's okay. Get rid of the background. And we're going to do it again. And I can stretch it if you want to see it. And go ahead and do our division. Same thing, just grab the little triangle, throw it on the image. It'll go ahead and do its magic. And now with that said and done, we're going to get rid of that. We don't need the background and we don't need that image anymore. And now we have this image. So let's have a look at it. So it really cleaned that up. It took care of a lot of the background on these stars, even though I didn't change it much. And it also cleaned up a lot of that purple halo, the purple cast that was in there. So it did a really good job. Okay. So those two things are done. So now we've got dynamic crop done, background extraction. Now we can do color calibration. So we can go back to our show image. Even though this is a narrow band, we can still do a color calibration on it. The color calibration that I like to use on this is in script, utilities, and it's in auto color. Press the button and you just sit back and take a sip of water. And it will go ahead and calibrate that color for us because there is some things going on in that image that we'll show you in just a minute. And we'll just
There's another question if you'd like it.
Yeah.
While we wait. Your computer works very fast. How much RAM, processor, etc.?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I have a half a terabyte of memory in the computer, and I like to keep that at least no more than half of it used up, because as I start getting into more and more memory usage on it, yeah, it slows things down like crazy. So yeah, and it's a Windows 10 processor that's in there. and I'm not sure what the actual processor is. I'd have to look and see. I had somebody build it for me, so. But anyway, yeah, so there are computers that people actually build for image processing, because you're dealing with a lot of data. You know, I mean, it's just, especially when you get cameras like the robotic one, you know, with the resolution that's on this, it's just huge. So yeah, keep your computer clean and fast and update it. Okay, so we got that one color calibrated. So we're going to unstretch it and restretch it. You notice how that purple went away? I don't know if you saw that. Can I go back? Can I do that?
Yep, there was some purple.
Yeah, anyway, it went away, because what happens is you go ahead and do the calibration, but you always have to do a restretch to put it back to where it actually is. So that's where it is now. So that one's fine. I can do the same thing with my RGB stars. I can just go ahead and color calibrate it. And at this stage, I kind of do what, if I can do this, if I'm doing the same procedure to one image, I'll just do it to the other while I have it done. And then at least I know that those things are being done. So we can go to auto color, and then we go ahead and let it do its thing. And this is a stretched image now. It's not stretched, it's just kind of allowing you to see what's in the non-stretched data. That's all this is. We'll do an actual real stretch on it in just a bit. So what I'm doing here now is just calibrating. I'm trying to get all my reds and my blues and my greens all lined up together so that they're nice and even, so that I'm getting a good balance of a good color balance, really is what this is doing. And it won't take much longer. I'm almost done. Just doing the blue right now. There we go. Okay, I'm going to unstretch it and restretch it. And there you go. So now we got our color balances done good. If you want to see, just to verify that this is a good color balance, you can go to script. If you have the easy processing suite, go down to easy soft stretch, just open it up, and it will show you how well balanced this is. And you can see, if you look at my histogram, everything is right on point, right? So that did an excellent job of balancing that color. Did a beautiful job. Okay, so now we've got those color balance. So the next thing we need to do is to take away some of the noise. And so we're going to do our multi-scale linear transform. And what that is basically is, when you look at an image, and I'll stretch this open a little bit more, and we're going to look inside of it, you can see there's a fair bit of noise there. This is really stretched, but I'm doing this so you can see that there's a lot of noise, and we need to deal with that noise. So how we do that is very, very simple. So what we're going to do is open up our multi-scale linear transfer. Again, processes, all processes. We know it starts with an M. Multi-scale linear transform, not median, not morphological, but multi-scale linear transform. That's where you find it. So we're going to open up that one. And this is such a great tool. Once you get used to using this, you can fly through this. I won't fly because I want to show you stuff, but you can. So, so the first thing we need to do is unstretch our data. Then we're going to go down to where it says linear mask, and we're going to use that little drop down arrow, and we're going to open up that. We're going to click on our preview mask. And when we do that, of course, our parameters disappear because it wants us to work on the mask only. We're going to create a preview. It's going to show us our mask. This mask is inverted so we can see what's going on. So what the job here is to do is to get rid of that background noise without destroying the fine detail of the structure. So, so we want to add a little bit of protection to the structure, but not too much, because I still want some noise reduction there. So you can see there's some of those darker, anything that's dark is getting very little protection. Anything that's white is not protected at all. And what I mean by protection is we're not protecting it from the noise reduction. So once we get a mask that we seem to be happy with, and on this 130 is actually, for this particular data, tends to work nicely. And the smoothness factor is 10. And what that smoothness factor does, you can push this up a little bit more, and it'll soften the edges around the stars and all that stuff, so that when you're actually doing the mask, it's not a really harsh mask. It's got a little feathering to the edges, if you will. So once you've got that done, then you're happy with that, then you simply just close the preview. The mask is internal. So even though I'm turning stuff off, I haven't done anything. I've got the mask set to where it needs to be. You notice that the parameters are still there. The mask is there. I'm going to Restretch, and I'm going to choose a part of the sky that will represent some of the, whoops, up here, by the way, you see these two little squares underneath the word workspace in my particular setup. This is a preview window. You just click on it, and then now you can actually drag and then drop a box, excuse me, over this window, and that's our preview. So I'm going to click on the preview, and you can see that there's lots of noise in there. So we need to clean that up. So this is the stock noise reduction that's on here. I'm on this image, I don't think I need to reduce it that much because it's a relatively clean image. So I'm going to take my top layer, because that's all these are, these 4 things. That means I'm going to do 4 layers of noise reduction, which is up here. And this, where it says noise reduction, the threshold is the first number, the 5. The amount is the second number, how much of that I want to apply. And the 1 on the very end is how many iterations. 1 iteration is fine, but I'm going to take it back from 5 down to 3.5. And then I'm going to take this 2.5 on the third layer down to say 1.5. Whoops. There we go. All of the amounts I think will be fine. Anyway, now that I've got that done, I just simply take the blue triangle, drop it on my preview, and let's see how much it cleans it up. And it doesn't take very long. There it is. Oh my gosh, look at the difference. So here's after we did the cleanup, and I'm going to zoom in even more. And here's before. Can you see the difference? It's just like day and night.
It just smooths it out a little, eh?
Yeah, oh, a lot. It really does. So
yeah, especially in the darker areas, you could definitely, like, you could almost see the different red, green, and blue like pixels. Yeah.
And you know what, Allendria, that's actually a really good point, because in the lighter areas, and that's why I didn't protect it as much, because when you're taking an image, just like a daytime photograph, if you take a picture of, say, a street, a picture of, say I'm taking a picture of you and you're walking down an alley, and I can see you going into the alley, you're going to be nice and clear and clean, but the alley may have a spot where the noise is, because that's where the darkest part of it is. And that's exactly what we're doing with this, is when we're stacking our information together, the lightest part of the image will not be as noisy typically as the darker part of the image. And that's why you do things in layers, because there's the first one would go on, how do I say that without saying it? I guess just like an onion. The first one takes a really good heavy part of the layering, and then you just get to thinner and thinner layers. Yeah. So, but anyway, did a good job. So all we have to do now is make sure we open our image and actually apply it to the image. It'll be no time at all, because it's already done all the heavy lifting. There, it's done. It's applied now to our image. So I'm okay with that. That looks good. So we will take get rid of our preview, simply right click on it and delete it. And now we have a noise reduced SHO image. Now we're going to do the same with our stars. Simply open them up, because they need reduction too. And I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to go ahead and add the reduction. And then we'll have a look at it. This will take a little bit of time, because it's not doing it to a preview. It's actually doing it to the whole image, but it won't take very long. It goes through pretty quick.
If you were doing this not for an audience, would you change those settings, or would you keep them the same too?
I would change them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I would, because there's a lot more background in this image to deal with than what there was on the other one. And this is RGB data, and it's really quite different than the show data. So I would definitely, I would do that. And in fact, if I was doing it for myself for a prize image, so to speak, when I really want to do a good job on, I would probably do this all separate, I would like the
Oh,
back
okay.
inspection, I would do
Yeah.
on the blue, I would do on the red, I would do on the green, because they all
Okay.
have different elements of noise and different stuff
Right.
with them, right?
Yeah.
So if I really wanted to be really, yeah, that's a great question. And yeah, so I would definitely do that. Okay, so we've got that done. So we can now put this away. We're taking, the noise reduction is now taken care of. So what's left to do? Basically, we need to stretch the images. So let's stretch the show image first. Because right now it's still linear, right? I mean, we can see the image, but it's linear. When I turn this stretch off, it's black. So really that's the image that we took. This is just allowing us to see what's in there when we stretch it. And look at all that purple stuff. This, I'm going to show you some magic in here in a minute. I'm going to stretch it first though. So we're going to turn it off. We're going to go to the easiest way to stretch this, really, until you get used to other techniques, is to go to your screen transfer function. And you can actually click the links now because we've already calibrated. So you can do this all together. And just simply give it the one little squeeze. And that's actually a nice stretch. I think that's a really good stretch to work with, especially with this data. So then you simply open up your histogram transformation tool. And what you're going to do is take the little blue triangle from your screen transfer function, drag it and drop it on the bottom bar of the histogram. You can see now that my histogram changed a lot. It's way up here. So then I'm going to take the blue triangle of the histogram transfer function, and I'm going to apply it to the image. It's going to turn white on me. It turned white because now I have two stretches. I've got this stretch on, and I've got this stretch on. I'm going to take the stretch off the screen transfer function, and that is now a linear stretch. That image is stretched. So when I put this tool away, and if I go to use this, that would normally turn it black, it doesn't do anything because it's now non-linear. It's now stretched to where we can use the data. Now, here's a cool little trick. You see all those stars, how they're purple? And you're saying to yourself, you know, if I was getting, you know, a nice piece of jewelry for Christmas, that would be a nice color to have. But when I'm doing astro imaging, I don't want it. So here's a real easy way to get rid of it. You're going to go to, excuse me, image, and you're going to invert it. And now you can see what was purple is now green. You're going to go back to your SCNR, open it up, and you're just simply going to drag that little triangle onto that image. Bang, the green is gone. So if the green is gone, when I go back to my image and re-invert it, ta-da, our stars look the way they should.
That, wow, okay. Can't do that in Photoshop. Or at least I haven't figured it out yet.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
if you look at this now, look at the color of the actual stars. They're actually natural. All those gold stars are in there. It's really quite a tool. So that little trick, when you're doing this kind of stuff, if you have that purple haloing star or purple stars or extra purple stuff, always remember that you can invert an image and then use your screen transfer function and you or your SCNR rather, and you can clean a lot of that stuff up. So anyway, that's good. So now let's stretch our RGB star image. Again, unstretch it because we know it's linear. And now let's go ahead and stretch it. Screen transfer function. We know it's linked because we've already color balanced. There's our stretch. Okay, we'll fix that after. And then we go ahead and open up our histogram transformation. Stretch it onto there. Apply that, drag that over here. It's going to turn white. Turn off that one, and now we are stretched. Okay, so that is ready. So now they're both stretched, they're both non-linear, and we can go ahead and do some other things to it. How are we doing for time?
It is 9:08.
Okay, so we're an hour. Okay, yeah, I should be able to get this done in a fair bit of time. I'm not going to do a whole bunch of finite stuff that I would do on this, but I did want to show you how to work on the stars, because I think if you want to work on this image, what I like to do is remove the stars and work on the structure itself in the background, because I can see it better. And then when I'm done, I can put the stars back. Now, the advantage to that is that as I'm working on this image, I'm not affecting the stars at all because they're not there. So, so that's a very good thing. So let's go ahead and do that. So I think I might have talked before about a script that you can get for Photoshop and for, or process rather, for Photoshop and for PixInsight, and it's called Star Exterminator. And so I've been using that now, and I'm a huge fan. You can do the same thing with the StarNet, but I find Star Exterminator is quicker. And the masks that I can make with Star Exterminator, with a lot of the data I've been doing lately, is just so efficient. So, so I've been kind of using this. So we just go ahead and open Star Exterminator. Whoops, I don't need that. And it's very, very simple. Just check generate star image, because you want to have star images, because this is going to turn this into a starless image, all at the push of a button. Again, that wonderful little triangle, drag and drop it, and then let Star Exterminator do its thing. Again, it's much, much faster than the StarNet operation. Much more efficient. It'll still take maybe about a minute or two. Might be a good time to, if there's any questions, I can answer them.
There's a comment / question. Ed was asking about how you clean up files, and like all the calibrated files take up huge amounts of hard drive space. What can you safely delete once we're happy with the result? So yeah, kind of like a comment question. I think it was maybe something to think about for a future episode, but any quick tips while we wait for it to process, I guess?
Your voice kind of broke up a bit, and I missed a part of it.
Oh, sorry about that. These aren't the best of headphones. But like, how do you, like, it's a question maybe to think about, and we can talk about it later, but also like, how do you save hard drive space? Because these files are huge.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, actually, that's a really good question. And I think we can address that while this is doing this. Basically, once you've got your masters made and you've had to look at the masters and you're happy with the masters, you don't need to keep your subs anymore, unless you think that you want at a later date, as your image processing gets better, to go back and to take that data out again and go at it, because it's a nice way to gauge how you're progressing with your image editing. So what I would recommend that you do, and I do it now because memory is cheap, is I would go out and I'll buy a 2 terabyte. 2 terabytes. Yeah, thank you. And just dump all of your subframes into that, and keep your computer space just for processing data. Keep storage something as a different thing altogether, and that'll go a long way. And you'll be glad you did, because there'll be some time when you go back, when you reprocess, and you know you got good subs, but your processing wasn't that great. And then all of a sudden you process something again, maybe a year later, and you're going, oh my gosh, what an improvement, using the same data set, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I wrote my column about that. Like, even just like, you know, I had some pictures of the Northern Lights, and I didn't realize it, but I'd also caught Steve, the non-auroral band, right? But this was back in 2019, and so I went back like maybe a month or two ago and just upped some of the levels, and then boom, there it was. So not quite like deep space astrophotography, but you know.
Yeah, but at least you were able to do it again, right?
Yeah, exactly, because I kept the raw files.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Yeah, I save everything. I got probably 5 or 6 hard drives now. They're just full.
Yeah. Yeah.
And be a good file person. Make sure that you date them, and
yeah. And they can can die.
Yes.
And I don't know what the timeline is on them, but like anywhere from like 2 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Like I had one, I think about 5 years, and then it finished its life cycle. That said, I'd also been kind of treating it poorly, like taking it, like your hard drives will last less time. My understanding is if you take them up on top of mountains,
Oh, really? I didn't
because
know that.
the air's less dense, and so it doesn't. If it's not a solid state hard drive, if
Oh,
it's
okay.
a spinning one, it can
It should,
there
yeah.
isn't the same lift to kind of get the drive moving.
Oh, I didn't know that. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So we're talking about Mount Carlton. I'll make sure I don't take any hard drives with me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Mhm.
Okay, so we've got our stars removed. So here's our stars, and here's our starless image. So I'm just going to tuck the stars away for a second. And at this point in time, what I like to do is use my, on anything that is dynamic, because we have a relatively bright core to all of this, and then it gets dark as we get out to the edge. I almost look at this as like a number 9, right? And I want that number 9 to pop out of that image, and then the rest of it can support that number 9. So, so I'm going to use my HDR multi-scale transfer, which is, let me just, excuse me, put that tool out of the way. You can see now that I'm starting to get a few things on the screen. And that's why when you're done with an image and you don't need it, get rid of it, because it will clutter up your screen. I don't need dynamic background distraction anymore. Let me get rid of that too. Okay, so this is the HDR multi-scale transform. And the job of this is to brighten up the brighter areas, darken up the darker areas. Or sorry, let me say that again. Anything that might be overexposed, it will actually take it down. It was kind of designed really for targets like M42, the Orion Nebula, which is that really, really bright core, and M31, Andromeda, super bright cores, and it's designed to tame those things down so you can retrieve more data in those brighter areas. Well, I found with this one here, it creates a nice effect in here. So what we're going to do with this one is pretty simple. We're just going to click on to the lightness and to lightness mask. And I'm going to take my number of layers and I'm going to push it up to about 7, because the higher up you go, the gentler it is on your image. We can use 1 iteration. I think that's going to be fine. And that's really all you have to do. Now let's go ahead and zoom in this a little bit, and we'll see what the effect on this particular target is. And it's a very quick, there you go, look, before. So it's kind of almost hazy. It's got a kind of haze to it. And what this does, it's almost like using dehaze in Lightroom or Photoshop. And if I apply it, you see the dynamic range that it creates. It gives it depth. It's almost like now I can look into this structure instead of looking at the structure. So it does a really nice job on this. So I'm okay with that that part of what I just did. So I'm going to leave it. So that's HDR multi-scale transform, and that's what that tool is. Now there's also still a bit of noise. Actually, that's pretty clean. That's a clean image. That's nice.
It looks really good. Like,
yeah, when you're working with good data, oh my gosh. So I'm not going to bother doing a TGV denoise. Let's just go ahead and do a little bit of contrast on it. So we're going to open up our local histogram equalization. This one has that little clear circle, so we can actually create a preview. So I'm just going to take this back, because it read about 50%. Never use 2 on the contrast limit. Take it back to 1.5. 2 is way too much. 1.5 is good. I'm going to try and see what this looks like. Okay, so there's what that did. It looks kind of nice on a smaller image, but it may be a little aggressive on this one. So I'm going to take it back to 40, and then I'm going to apply it to the to our image, because that's just a preview. And let's see what it does. And typically, this again is going to give us it's like a contrast is what it does. So let's have a look at it, and just to make sure we haven't gone too far before. Oh yeah. And then after. Again, at this point in time, these little parts of the nebulosity, I call them fingers, the little fingers that are sticking up. Just keep an eye on those when I apply this. You see how much now they get kind of soft there in the look to it. But when I add this, and then you look in the darker regions here, again, things get just still a little soft. But when I add in that contrast, again, it's a small change, but it's a huge change. If you could see here on my screen, and I know by transmitting out to the real world, you may not see it as much as I am, but trust me, it's a huge, huge difference. That looks gorgeous. That's absolutely gorgeous. Okay, so we're good with that. So we'll take that away. Sometimes I would do a second one. That's why I've got two of those here, a 50 and a 150, but for time, I think we're okay with this one. It looks good. Once I've got that done, then this is where what I call salt and pepper. We're going to open up our curves transformation, and this is where your artistic ability will come in. If you don't want that as green cast as it is, then you can go into your curves transformation. You're going to go ahead and reset it, and you're going to create a preview so you can see exactly what you're doing. And you can stretch that out. So if you want to make it bigger, so you have a larger scale look at it. And so then I can, if I want to reduce my green just a bit, I could actually take it right out of my overall green, just a bit. And you'll start to see some orange start to form in there, because that's actually in there, that red data. I can take it out that way, or I can actually go to there, and I can slightly change it. So again, this is where you would kind of say to yourself, okay, is that too blue? Is that too green? Is that, you know, so this is kind of where you go ahead and put your artistic impression on the image. I'm just going to go ahead and just reset this.
This is exactly like Photoshop too, right? Like the curves that you play around with. That's like the tool that I use the most anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you go to the RGBK right here, you're dealing with the black and white image, but on the overall scale. And this would be exactly like your curves image. So if I want to darken down the darker areas, maybe, you know, maybe hide some of my sins I've created there, but I want to increase that central core or like that, I can do that. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Allendria. It's exactly the same curve that you would have in Photoshop. Exactly. So I like to see a little bit of the nebulosity that's around it. Then I would go ahead and go to my lightness and do the same thing. Now the lightness is dealing with just the light part of the image. So what you don't want to do is push it too much, because you've lost all the dynamic range, right? So we want to keep that down a little bit, but maybe if I want to hit that spot a little harder, not too much you're blowing it out, but make it more evident, then that little number 9, all that data start to look pretty cool.
Yeah. And then when you're, sorry, I'm gonna just ask a question here, because like when you're playing around with this stuff too, it can like if you go too far with the lightness or the darkness, like you can end up with some clipping, right?
Absolutely.
And that's not what you want.
That's not what you want. Yeah.
Okay.
You find out whether you're clipping or not. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on my screen because I had to drop it down. But what you would do is you just lay your cursor over the black area of the image, and then down on the bottom, so long as you have a value that is higher than 0,
yeah, you
haven't clipped. So
okay.
I like to keep my background at around about 10. If you're doing it in Photoshop, the number 10 is actually where they want you to keep your background, because that is still, it's not pure black, it's not clipped, it's more black gray, which is a little bit more natural. And the same as the white end of it, like the brighter end, you want to make sure that you don't go above the 255, because if you do, then you're clipped, you have no information anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that looks good. If I'm, you know, just for the sake of getting through this, let's just go ahead and say, you know what? Oh, I like, there we go, the nice red glow. So I've got some stuff going on there. I like it. So we'll say, okay, so then all we have to do is pull our preview down. So there's where we started. And then we're just going to go ahead and we can execute or we can drag and drop, whichever you want to do. I'll drag and drop. And you can see that I've changed the image, created some cool colors, and bada boom, bada bing. That's it. So now that we've got that done, all we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and put our stars back. So we're going to take these stars, which we did nothing to because we like them so much, and we're going to put them back over here. Very, very simple thing. We're going to do a little pixel math. And as scary as that sounds, it's actually pixel math, and excuse me, it's nothing more than a blending tool. So you go to Process, All Processes, and Pixel Math. And you've got this little screen. So we just want to open up our expression editor, and we open that up. And all we want to do is add the stars back into the image. So what's our image called? It's called Show DBE DBE. So let's find that. There it is there. Double click on it, and it goes right into, it populates into the script. Then we're simply going to hit our plus button because we want to add something to it. And then I want to add the Show DBE DBE stars. There they are right there. Double click on it, and it populates in the script. Okay, I'm good to go. All I have to do is hit OK, and the magic is done. I'm just going to drag and drop and watch what happens. Ta-da! Our stars are back. And there we have a really, I mean, again, this is not, I would certainly not call this finished, but at this stage of the game, this is where you would have fun. You know, just like you're taking your color pencils out and you're creating art, and this is where you do it. My recommendation is to find an image that you really like of this particular target done in narrowband, and then put that up on one of your other screens if you got more than one screen, and use that as reference so that when you're actually adjusting your colors, you actually have a target. You're actually going towards something rather than just randomly doing it, because you know when you do it randomly, you don't know what you're up with, and you don't really have an end picture in mind. But if you've got that reference image, it's the best thing you can do, because then it trains your eyes on starting to put together what those images perhaps should look like. So. Okay, so
yeah, when
Sorry.
you're doing this, like, and just even tonight, like looking at that little, I've never really noticed how fierce the finger nebulosity is, and so that tool was great for bringing that out. Yeah, absolutely.
And the cool thing too is, like, before I put the stars back, another thing that you could do to this, and it's a real simple procedure. You just go to Processes, All Processes, and Unsharpen Mask, which is the same idea as what you would do in Photoshop. If you don't want to destroy it, you just need to know what the standard deviation is of this picture. And it's real easy to do. All you're going to do is go to Processes, All Processes, go to your statistics. Load this image into the statistics. So it's the Show DBE DBE right there. And we're looking for standard deviation. You're not seeing it because we have to put it in. So you just push that little wrench and then click on standard deviation and simply hit OK. And now your standard deviation is in there. What we're looking for is the highest number, which is 834, or in this case, 835, if I round it up, and -2. So that's the numbers I'm looking for, 835 -2. So I'm going to put that 8.35 right there. So now I've got my standard deviation. Whoops. Try that again. 0.35. There we go. And if I change this, we'll let you, it will. Yeah, okay. So it's 8.35. We'll try 8.3. And then when you make, then you can go ahead and do the same thing here. You can create a real-time preview. And then you see how much sharper that image is, or how much softer it is. Once you've got the deviation in there, you're not going to destroy it when you start to do the sharpening. If you don't find that standard deviation, what I find is everything that you do can be, it's just either overly done or underly done, and you never really get that really nice sharpness without destroying a lot of stuff. So let's just try this one. I think that might look okay if I add that in. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. So there's before or after. There's before. See how soft it is?
Mhm.
And I just sharpened it up. Not much. Look at the fingers. That's where you want to look.
Yep.
Fingers are soft. Now they're sharp. And because I did this deviation, it hasn't thrown my stars into these real sharp.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But typically I would have done that before I put the stars back anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So other than that, that takes care of it, like for this session, the
Mhm.
show image. The only thing we haven't done was talk about our RGB stars. And I won't get into all the processing that you might want to do with it, but I will show you how to take them off of this and put it into this. In actual fact, I've already shown you. So I'm just going to do the same thing we did before. We're doing this. We're going to go ahead and go to process, all processes, star exterminator, make sure we generate our star image. We're going to pull the stars off of it, just like we did the other one. Excuse me. Normally I would go through and I would do a bunch of stuff to the stars on this, but we'd be here for a while. So this kind of processing takes a fair bit of time. And at the beginning, I wanted to show how to put it all together so that when you're dealing with your subframes, like the two masters, that you've got some really good data to work with. Because if you have poor data, you're going to struggle the whole time with all of these methods that we're showing. It'll never really come out to anything well, and you'd be very frustrated. So take your time, get your frames done properly, get everything stacked properly so that you got really good master light frames to work with. And then from there, the processing is so much easier.
Yeah. Bruce Murray asked, would deconvolution help with the show image?
Yes, it would. Absolutely. Yeah, I kind of said before that I might only do deconvolution on luminosity, but there is no luminosity in this, and deconvolution would definitely help retrieve some of that lost data, or some of that lost resolution rather. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I would do it. That's the nice thing about PixInsight is there are so many things you can do. Like once you get used to the tools, and I do it all the time. Like every day, I'm reinventing something. It's like, oh, what if I try this? Oh my gosh, look at that! It works great. And I think it's like anything else that you take on as a hobby or as even a profession is, and that's why professionals with experience are so good at what they do, is because they've gone through all of this stuff and they start to realize, well, if I do this and if I do that. And that's why maybe this professional will consult this guy because he's done using the same tools, but he's come up with his own way of doing things. So that's the beauty of this. It's just endless what you can do. There are some right things, but at the same time, there are some things you can continue to experiment with. So, okay, so we pull the stars off this, so I don't need that. And so this is our RGB stars, right? So if I go back to the show image now, I would have to take the stars off of this again, which I can do, and it's going to take away some of the steps that we just did, but I just want to show you how you would do it. I'm just going to go back to no stars, and then I'm going to take out my pixel math, and I'm going to do the same thing, process, except I have to change what I'm saying here. So we're going to go back to our expression editor. And I want to take away the show stars because I want to use the RGB stars, right? So the RGB stars, DBED stars, that's the one I want. I click on it. Now it's in there. I'm okay with that. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to put the RGB stars on this image. And there they are.
Beautiful.
That's it. So if I had worked on the here we go. If I had worked on the RGB stars, I would have, and maybe I think maybe Allendria on our next session, I want to show you how to preserve the colors in the stars so that they don't turn out to be white in the center and just a little bit of orange and stuff on the ends. There's an actual process to that when you're dealing with RGB stuff, and it really makes a huge difference. So I'll show that the next time.
Okay. We have one question left from Ed. I noticed you were not saving at each process step. Is that because you don't usually, or do you usually, like when you're doing it?
Okay, if I'm understanding the question, basically, what did we do to this image from start to finish, right? I'm assuming the question.
Or like, do you save at each process step?
I don't have to. I'll show you why.
Yeah.
So if I go to this image, for example, I can right click on it and I can go to my load my history explorer. I can go back to any point that I want to in the image. So if I just want to go back to where I just did my background neutralization, or if I want to go back to where we inverted the stars and took out the purple, it's all there. So this is your roadmap from starting from just a master image to all the different things that we did. Right up to the pixel math where we put on those RGB stars.
Right.
So it's all right there. So at any time you can basically undo back to a point, but if you don't know where that point is, you can just find it right there. Just your history. There are all my points. Oh, that's where I want to go back to, right? Oh, and then you go right back to that point, or you can just click on it and it'll go right there. So
is that still available to you if you close PixInsight?
If I
or does that?
You know what? Great question, because I've lost so much stuff. Thank you for asking that question. I want to show you this because this is. Oh, thank you for that.
Thanks,
so
Ed.
what you do is you take the file, you've done all of this, and you want to work on it on a later date. So you don't want to lose the ability to go in and you want to have it just the way you left it. It's almost. I'm leaving my work desk today. Don't let the cleaners in. I know my mess. I know where things are. So what you're going to do is you're going to go down and you're going to save the project. And then you're going to make sure that you bundle the project and you're going to call it a name. Not like that. You're going to call it something. So let's call this Tuesday Bubble. And we have show with RGB stars. And you don't have to worry about underlining or anything like that or misspelling, because PixInsight, you're not doing anything here. So you don't need the underscores and all that stuff.
Okay.
And you just simply hit save. And then it's going to clear all this bundle. So make sure you check your bundle, because that's taking everything that you did, everything that's left on this desk, the curves transformation right where it is, the show DVE stars, anything that's left open, it's going to save everything. So you click on that bundle, and then you just simply go ahead and say, okay. And that's what we're doing now. So what's going to happen, it's going to save this data exactly the way that it is. So if you've got 5 or 6 or 7 images open, or if down in here, I don't know if I can show it to you here. Maybe I can in a sec. No, I have to wait for it to do its thing. But there it is. Down here, you've got the 4 workspaces. I'm only using one. Sometimes you might end up using a couple of those workspaces for other things that you're doing on the image. So the more that stuff that you got there, the larger this storage is going to be, because you're saving all that stuff. And that's another reason why when I'm done with something that I know I'm not going to need again, I just get rid of it, because there's less storage space and it's quicker to reload it. So anyway, so it won't take very long to do this, because there's not a lot of stuff on here now. And then when it's done, I'm going to show you how to close it and then go back and open it again and show you that everything's still where it should be. And if I'm wrong, well, I got a feeling I just might be right. We'll see.
Well, it's a good test. It's
Sometimes we think we have more knowledge than we do, and then it's all like, you know what? Whoops. I should have did that, or I should have listened to that person. Anyway, this is a great target to play with. So anybody out there that wants to download this particular data set. The Bubble Nebula is so great to do, but it's so much better to do it in narrow band. I've always only done it with one-shot color, so it's always been the typical red hydrogen alpha. But to do it like this, you can really see the depth to this structure. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. The bubble itself, like it's pretty impressive how much detail we can get with this scope.
Yeah.
And,
There we go. So it saved it. So now we saved everything. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this. And PixInsight's going to give me a warning. Unsaved pixel data will be permanently lost. Do I want to exit anyway? Yeah, I trust your PixInsight. Done. Okay. So now I'm going to open up PixInsight again. I'll wait for that to finish. There we go. So, whoop. Screen sharing. Do I have to screen share again? Yeah, I do. Can I do that?
yeah, I think it's because it was sharing the program.
Okay. Oh, okay. And then share. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to open up. And what did we call this one?
Tuesday Bubble.
Tuesday's Bubble. Let's see what happens. See if we can find it. Hopefully we can. Okay, so when PixInsight opens up, we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Open Recent project files, and there's Tuesday's Bubble show with RGB stars, right? So you don't have to go looking all through your computer. PixInsight will tell you the last thing you did, and then you go ahead and click on it, and let's see if it in fact kept all of our data and all of our things the way we did when we left to go for our lunch. Talking about a desk.
Or the power went out, or
yeah. Hopefully you saved it before the power went up.
Yeah. Ooh.
Okay, and there we go, and there it is. Everything's in place, and we're ready to start up again. And we can
Does
go ahead.
does it keep the history of the image? So if I wanted to,
let's check it and load history. There it all is.
There it is. All right, there you go.
Yeah. So yeah, so make
great.
sure. Yeah, and if you want to, like, if you're kind of proud of your picture, or you want to say, I want to maybe look at my picture and then compare it to other ones, then if you just want to save the picture, make sure if you got two of them open, you click on the one you want, go to File, and then you can go ahead and just save it as, and it will save it as an image. So if you want to call it a JPEG, or if you want to call it a TIFF, or a FITS file, however you want to save it, and then you can tell it where, I just save it to my desktop, and that's it. So you can save images along the way if you want to do that. So, so how do I stop sharing right there?
And that's a great, the fact that you have that whole history there too. Like that's like for Sky News, when people submit their photos, we ask to give as much detail as possible. And so sometimes those details can be really, like if it's there and it tells you exactly what you did, you can just send us.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you know what it's like, because I know you did do photography and stuff. So it's like when you're trying, when somebody says to you, what was your settings on your camera? Then you got to go find your metadata, right?
Yeah. I use Jeffrey's EXIF viewer. I think it's a online tool, and you can just throw your images there, and it gives you all your EXIF data.
Oh, I've got to find that. I don't know about that one.
Let me see if I have it accessible here.
Because what I do is I throw the image, or I open the image up in Photoshop or whatever, and then I just right click it. Then I go looking for the metadata, right? So it tells me what my ISO was and what my f-stop was, and whatever the pictures, if I'm doing data pictures, right?
Yeah, I just threw it in the chat. It's Jeffrey's EXIF viewer.
Okay.
So that's when I'm feeling kind of lazy. I can just throw it in there.
Anytime you can save time, right?
Yeah. And Ed also says Faststone is good for that too.
Yeah. Can you see the image behind me?
Yeah.
So I just want you to kind of look at the stars. Which way am I going? There we go. These ones over there.
Yeah.
And you can see how small and tight and round and soft edged they are.
Mhm.
These are there's a technique to do that, and the next session, I think I'll show how to do that, because it's not a long process,
Mhm.
but it's just using a specific tool and a couple of masks, and you can go ahead and it's really it's not complicated at all, because PixInsight will make the mask for you. And anyway, it's an easy thing, but it's just so that you can get your stars tighter and rounder, and because the smaller we can get them, the more really what it's like being out in space, because we
Yeah.
need such
Yeah.
information going through the atmosphere, going through the optics. It
Mhm.
spreads our image out, right? And anyway, I'll save that yap for.
Well, I really look forward to it. And thanks so much for coming and joining us here tonight and teaching us so much about how to edit this data. I've learned a ton. This is great.
Oh,
And yeah, so I guess do we have any more questions here?
oh, if there is, please.
Nope,
ask.
there aren't. They were just nice, thanks, super. People are happy.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah.
Great.
Well, anyway, thank you, Allendria, for letting me do this, and let me work with this data. Because again, before we go, anybody who's out there that hasn't downloaded this data, and Sky News being so generous, allowing you to do this for free, take advantage of it, because it is just absolutely wonderful data to work with. So
It really is. And thanks to the robotic telescope team for their
Yes.
work on it too. So, and with that, I'll close the session, and thanks everybody for attending, and we'll see you next month.
okay, and Merry Christmas, because we're not going to see you till then.
No, not until then. So indeed. Have a good one.